Secretary, would you call the roll?
I sure will. Let's start with Ken Wooster.
Here.
Tim Lanehart.
Here.
Steve Williams.
Here.
Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Aaron McClellan.
Here.
And Emily Lisborg.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Excellent, thank you. I'd like to just do a bit of a change here as we get going with our agenda. The question was asked about an opportunity to discuss or deliberate about our interviews that we had in December, I guess it is now. And I'd like to entertain a motion to amend our agenda to allow us to discuss those recommendations from those interviews. Would someone care to make such an amendment? That will get our agenda in order, and then we can talk about that later in our meeting.
I move that we complete our discussion for the candidates for the
Recommendations. Okay?
I will second that motion that Joyce made for the end of the meeting before member reports.
Okay. Do I see any objections to the motion? Seeing none. What we will do, since we have a number of folks here this evening to speak to us, welcome. And I'd like to move the discussion down after our general business, or part of our general business, I guess. Make it 5E. That way, then we'll have given due respect to everyone that's here and get our meeting along, and then we can have the discussions near the end of our meeting, if everybody's good with that approach.
Well, I would say maybe, since I probably you don't want me here for that anyway, so wait till the end. Move it down even past, like move it to number 6 or 8 or 7.
It is hard because last year, I guess I don't know the official rule, but last year Tim West did sit in on deliberations.
I mean, I'm fine. I just didn't know if it would be awkward for
I'm not,
anybody else.
I guess others can voice their opinion, but I'm not uncomfortable, Ken, with doing that. Our deliberations are in public anyway, so.
Yeah.
So if I really wanted to, I could go online.
Go back and look at the bad things you said about anybody. So at that point, I'm not sure it's really a problem.
Okay, then I don't.
Okay. All right. So there we go. I understand we do have a public comment.
Well,
We sort of maybe have a public comment.
the gentleman that reached out to me is not in attendance tonight, so I
Okay.
do not believe we have a public
I guess
comment
what
after
I
all.
would do there, if he were to show up here in a few minutes, we can always circle back to our agenda item and come back to public comment. All right. Next item, the approval of our minutes for October 17th, which are fairly, I'd forgotten about all those discussions we had as I was reading down through there. Do I have a motion regarding the October 17th, 2024 minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes from October 17th, 2024.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any objections to the motion? Okay. The voluminous notes have been approved. All right. We're on to our presentations. Water Environment Services update. Welcome. Please introduce
Recording in
yourself.
progress.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's right. Please introduce yourself again for us. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Blue. I'm the Finance Manager for Clackamas Water Environment Services, and I will be co-presenting tonight with Alexa Morris, who is our Utility Relations Coordinator. I wanted to get started by thanking Tom for inviting us tonight, and thanking the committee members for allowing us to join your meeting for this presentation. Together, we're excited to share an overview of one of the ways that West partners with the Oregon City through the Good Neighbor program. All right.
Can you guys online see that screen? Excellent,
Yes,
thank
we
you.
can.
Great, thanks.
And next slide, please. Or am I scrolling?
Well, there is also, I think, Does that work on your side?
Doesn't seem to.
Oh, no.
Gonna switch out for a minute.
Stu? Come on. Oh, awesome. Oh.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
There we go.
All right, in tonight's presentation, I'll provide some background on Good Neighbor programs generally, the history at WES, then dive into how WES's program works, which projects are eligible, the mechanics of funding, then I'll hand it off to Alexa, who will share some specific projects before we hand it off to Tom, who will share about the good work that Oregon City is doing. Good Neighbor programs have existed since the 1980s. And they started as a way to provide a tangible benefit to communities for hosting large industrial plants like wastewater treatment facilities, power plants, or even landfills. Many of these facilities were originally located in remote areas with sparse development, but as we experienced residential and commercial growth, people began living closer to these sites, and that brought more attention to the potential impacts. In response, Good Neighbor programs were created to address these concerns and build positive relationships with the hosting communities. Over time, these programs have evolved. Today, they're about more than just offsetting negative impacts, and they reflect the host city's specific priorities, including funding for community education, workforce and economic development, and advancing environmental restoration and water quality. WES created the Kellogg Good Neighbor Program in partnership with the City of Milwaukee in 2011. Under that original program, WES provided funding for odor control, landscaping, and plantings immediately around the Kellogg plant in Milwaukee. The city and WES determined the projects, and WES managed the funds. In partnership with the cities of Gladstone and Oregon City, WES created the Tri-City Good Neighbor Program in 2019. And that agreement was loosely modeled on the Kellogg program, but expanded to include a larger project area that focused on parks and Oregon City's urban renewal district. And it also allows the cities to manage their own funds, allowing greater flexibility for the spending. They also determine the projects directly. For a project to be eligible, it has to be located within the Tri-City Good Neighbor area, which is shown in the purple shaded area on the map here. The Tri-City Wastewater Treatment Facility is the little brown polygon there. This is about a 545-acre area. Beyond that, it's just up to the city to decide on the type, size, and nature of the projects as long as they meet one of their criteria over on the right of the slide. As the criteria is pretty broad, Tom has worked closely with us to confirm specific project eligibility, which I'm sure he'll share more about later. So how does this work? Well, at the beginning of each fiscal year, WES sends funding to the city of Oregon City and Gladstone. The funding amount was initially set at $250,000. Now it's based on the proportion of equivalent dwelling units, or EDUs, served in each city for the prior fiscal year. Oregon City receives about $200,000 of funding a year. Since program inception, the total received is about $1.2 million. From there, the city determines the project and manages the funding, ensuring that there's an opportunity for citizens to provide feedback on the process. The city then provides an annual report to WES by April 1st that summarizes the activity for the prior fiscal year. Public communication is a really important aspect of the program, and WES partners with the city to collaborate on shared branding, project promotion, and signage. There's a timeline for using the funds. Funds may be carried forward for 3 years. Any unused funds are then returned to WES. However, there is an exception. If the city requests an extension of that term, WES will grant it. And Tom has worked closely with us to extend the timing for Oregon City. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Alexa.
All right, good evening. So now let's see some of those funds in action. So this is an example from our neighbors in Gladstone. They used their Good Neighbor funding to actually fund one of their parks, and they did that in partnership with some of the other funding that they had received. So the Good Neighbor agreement was able to help them get to the finish line, which is exciting. So this is from a ribbon cutting at Meldrum Park. All right, next slide. Here are some examples from City of Milwaukee. So the last few years, they have actually used their Good Neighbor funds for debt service to their waterfront park bond. And in this photo, you can see a picnic table, which was also funded by Good Neighbor funds. And they also placed trash cans at Kellogg Creek Park as an additional way to help keep the park clean. And as Aaron mentioned too, some plantings have also taken place as well. All right, next slide. And Oregon City. So here are some things that y'all have done with the funding. My favorite is being able to see the before and after pictures. So getting to see the resurfacing that has been done with those funds, master planning work, some tree work, speed bump installation, ADA compliance access, and benches and picnic tables, which I think is pretty cool. And next, I will pass the mic to Tom to talk more about what Oregon City will do with Good Neighbor funds in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexa and Aaron. Appreciate you being here. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight is just kind of the flexibility of these funds and how they fit into the broader funding strategy for Oregon City parks. So you can see that they can be used in a wide variety of ways, but they do have to be used specifically within the project area, which for us is kind of the Clackamas Park, John Storm, Sportcraft Landing, and the Cove River Access Trail. Some of the projects that we've done in the past have been very successful, including some of those upgrades to the Cove River Access Trail. You can really see the benefit to those, but we do have kind of a larger balance in our bank. We've been carrying some of those funds over year to year. And as Aaron mentioned, what we're looking to do is earmark those specifically towards Clackamas Park. Now that we have completed the process of finishing this master plan, getting that through community outreach, and we're ready to start moving into the design and building phase. We have about $800,000. I think it's a little bit more than that. And we have that earmarked towards Clackamas Park and those next steps. So that can be used for design and engineering, which then can be used as match for larger capital grants for construction. That's kind of the plan right now. We could also, use some of that money for more day-to-day maintenance needs as they come up, if anything were to happen in those sites. But the overall larger bucket of money, we're really looking to utilize that at Clackamas Park for the long term. And with that, I will open it up to the group for questions.
This can be for Tom or for Aaron or Alexa, I guess. What is the deadline for these funds to be used by, or do we just have to have a plan to specifically use them for, or use them by?
Tom, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, if you just want to talk a little bit about kind of, there's the 3-year timeline that they have to be used by, but then if there's any stipulations on our longer term plan.
Sure. So the funds from the first year, 2019, have all been spent. And so Tom asked to be able to carry over the funds from 2020 and 2021. And right now, those are being carried forward to 6/30/26, I think, based on the letter asking for approval to extend the term. But approval beyond that is possible as well. Wes is really interested in seeing the city put the money to good use and improve the area around the plant for the community. So I want to mention Greg Geist, our director, is on the call, and he's ultimately the one that makes the decision about extending. So he's been incredibly accommodating for the city's requests.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Just a quick question. So Tom, just a question from a perspective of something I'm familiar, obviously, with the recent work that I believe you were contracting regarding the bull ramp and some of the archaeological. Were these some of the funds that were used for that archaeological work at the park, or was that a funding source that was utilized to move that process along?
That's correct, yes. These funds ended up being our match for the Oregon State Marine Board grant. So that's the nice thing about having this, is it's kind of our little bucket of money for any time we have these grant opportunities come up. We can point to this as match, and it's not coming out of the city's general fund.
I see. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. So you said it, mine going through too many things. The new funds are made available each July?
That's correct. Yep, the agreement specifies that we send the money during each July.
And did you say what the original source of these funds were? What?
Yeah, that's a good question. These funds are West's ratepayer funds, so funds collected from West's ratepayers throughout our regional service area.
Okay. So this July, we'll have another increment of funding come to add to, or however we've got.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So it in many ways behooves us to try and get projects going and get, I mean, you give us extensions, that's true, but having been in that kind of a situation before, another life, why you want to spend those funds not as quickly as you can, but judiciously so they get spent and moved on then. Yeah. Any other questions? I mean, my head's just going through a lot of different projects.
question.
we talked about. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
Tom, when we did the master plan, and of course there's going to be a new skate park and the boat ramp and moving the RV park, and has that been triaged? Do we know what's going to happen first? Do we have any kind of a timeline as to what our plans are?
That's a great question. We've been kind of working through that with the work that we're doing with the capital improvement plan and the SDC plan. That's something we'd really like to discuss with you. If you remember, we had talked about the idea of coming up with a 5-year capital plan where we start to prioritize these projects. That, to me, is one of the big projects where we need to start to prioritize, what comes first, what comes second. In my mind, I think probably boat ramp is at the top of the list, just because those funds, the matching funds for that are sitting out there kind of waiting for us to take advantage of them. We have the ability to do that relatively quickly in the timeline of construction. I would say that probably the one that makes the most sense after that would be the RV park, just to help move that to its permanent location, and then we have this new area in the park to work with and to start to build new amenities in that space. That's kind of what I've envisioned. The phasing of this is boat ramp, RV park, and then we move into the park amenities. But that's certainly something that we're seeking input from you and from the public on.
Thank you.
I was thinking of follow-up to Joyce's question with regard to priorities. There are certainly things up there on the John Storm Park end that we've talked about doing as well, but I suspect those are a bit on hold until the highway project gets done. We haven't heard about that in a while. Tom, where's the date of that, the bridge completion? Have you heard anything, how that fits for things we might want to be doing on that end of the park area?
Yeah, and that actually would be something that we'd like to bring back to you in the next couple months and try to get ODOT to provide an update. The last that I heard, which was about a month and a half ago, they've been extended through 2027, if I remember correctly. So there will be some sort of work still occurring in there through 2027.
Okay.
So I think it would probably be good to have them come in, provide an update on what that means, what that work will be accomplishing, and why it's necessary, and how we can start to strategize. At the end of that project is when they will be required to reconstruct the park to the standards that existed before. So that's kind of, it's been described to me as the last thing they'll do as part of the project. So that's our opportunity then to, once we have a firm date, we can go in and start to plan out what else goes into John Storm and how we can make that happen concurrently.
Well, and obviously that could have an impact on how we utilize these funds and how it all ties together with things that we've talked about on that end of the area. So, okay.
Yep.
Any other questions regarding?
But we can still put in the boat ramp before they're done with the bridge.
Oh yeah.
I just,
It's outside of
we need to
the
get
bridge
moving.
influence
Yes,
project.
okay.
Yeah. At least I think it's outside the area, unless they're planning on something I don't know about. But,
more construction vehicles.
One question, kind of a follow-up.
Yeah, Emily?
Tom, you mentioned that the funds are being kind of held for a matched savings. Is there specific grants in the future that they're kind of like on Parks' radar in terms of applying for, or is that just kind of a general like holding strategy for the moment?
No, that's a great question. There are 3 grants in particular that we are planning on applying for. There's the local government grant, which will probably end up being a next spring, so spring of 2026 application. There is the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, which is typically released in the fall. So that if we can kind of get our pieces moving here relatively quickly, we could theoretically apply for that grant here in fall of 2025. That's the target date I'd like to shoot for. And then there's the Metro Nature and Neighborhoods Capital Grants Program. That's one that's kind of reoccurring with their bond. As long as they have the bond funding available, they do that program pretty consistently. So those are the 3 for kind of the park amenities. And then there's the Oregon State Marine Board grants for the boating access facilities or boating facility grants. That's what we would target for the boat ramp.
Okay, great. That sounds like a really good list. And then I guess just another follow-up. Are all of the timelines for those, like, do they have to be used within, say, a year of receiving those grant funds? Or what is
They all typically have a timeline associated with them, but they take into account like some of those cover the project from design through completion. So they sometimes have like a 5-year timeline, a 3-year timeline. It's really dependent on the grant itself. Typically the state grants, like local government, they kind of want you to come with a shovel-ready project. And then there's typically like a 2 to 3 year cycle for construction. The state agencies are very good to work with too. They do amendments and allow holdovers, knowing that projects sometimes encounter unforeseen circumstances, but they all typically have some sort of construction-based timeline.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
So I guess I had a follow-up to that one.
Sure. Go ahead.
Tom, do you know if the funding is secure for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grants for the next couple of years?
As far as I've heard, that yes, that funding is secure. The last time I actually sat on that grant committee for a little bit, and we had more funding than we had projects. So there was a pretty decent bank left over. Haven't seen that really change in the past couple of years. So as the last numbers that I saw, it's pretty secure for the future.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Geist, will we have you there on the, you joined us this evening. Is there anything you'd like to add this evening?
No, it's just my pleasure to be a good neighbor, and I hope you guys use these funds in very productive ways.
Well, thank you. We, like I said earlier, I can run through my head a lot of different things that, based on some of the discussion we just had here about what the funds could qualify for. There's lots that we could, I think, do good work with. So that's something that we'll be working on down the road to discuss with Tom and get some recommendations, hopefully, to him. Anything else this evening? Okay. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you for your
us.
time tonight.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. As usual, Aaron and Emily, I'm terrible at being able to look at the screen and see you got your hand up or anything, so just shout out if you need to.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Next presentation, cemetery fees update. I bet that's Tom.
It is, and I apologize for not being there in person tonight. It was recommended to me not to get all of you sick by sitting next to you.
I appreciate that.
So apologies if I cough a little bit in the middle of my presentation. So if you remember at our October meeting, and I'll just kind of give the backstory while Corey gets the presentation ready. If you remember at our October meeting, we discussed cemetery fees and how they are, kind kind of really in need of an update. They haven't been updated in 20 years. We did our tour in the spring, if you remember. We walked through the cemetery, we talked about some of the operations, and we kind of mentioned that this was in the works. So this is really a review of those fees. We took into account a lot of the feedback that we received from PRAC during our discussion in the October meeting. And so you'll see a lot of the things that people were looking for in this presentation. This has also been reviewed by the city manager and the assistant city manager. They gave us some feedback and we adjusted as needed. And really what we're looking for tonight is just to introduce this to you. Because of our kind of delay in getting new members on board, we're not going to ask for a vote tonight. We're just going to kind of have the information. And then we'll come back in February. We'll get any questions that you have from the presentation tonight, address those, bring it back in February, hopefully with a full member roster to discuss and take a vote. So with that, we'll dive in. And Corey, if you could advance the slide for me. So if you remember from our discussion, we're really looking at basically three options here, with the fourth option being we just keep things as is. At its current level today, with the fees that we have in place, the cemetery is essentially a 50-50 subsidy. It varies year to year based on the number of sales that we do, but essentially we're making about $300,000 on $600,000 of expenses for the cemetery. Those numbers are relatively new in tracking. So in the past, the cemetery was kind of wrapped up all in one budget with all of the parks. So a lot of our historical data just comes from looking at, individual POs and looking at how expenses were calculated. But in this last biennium, we actually split out the cemetery budget for the first time, and we've been able to track expenses a little better over time. There's a lot of things that we've seen that have been pretty spot on, and there's a couple where we were like, that was probably a miss on that guess. So we're going to make some adjustments in that in the next biennial budget that you'll see in the next few months as we start that process. But looking to the future are kind of three main options. There's the what I'll call the nuclear option, which is really like going to a break even, fully recovering 100% of our costs, making approximately $600,000 a year. That's option number one. It does represent about a 200% price increase from our current prices, so basically doubling them in every category. Then we looked at what it would take to get to a 75% cost subsidy, a 75% cost recovery with a 25% subsidy, and that ends up being right around a 60%, 65% cost increase. It varies in the categories, but it's relatively on average. It's about a 65% cost increase. And then just a 25% price increase, so taking our current prices and increasing them by 25%. That does get us closer to the overall goal of, a total cost recovery, but it gets us to about a 60% cost recovery overall. We then took that and looked at a 10-year analysis, which we'll show. And then we'll compare those prices to other competitors in the market, in the region, looking at both public and private cemeteries that provide at least a similar level of service as we do. After that, we'll kind of look at that difference in service and some of those key areas where the services that we provide, being a municipality, are sometimes just different than what a private cemetery can offer, and what that translates to in the cost structure. Then we'll look at some expense allocation and the opportunity for some new fees that are traditionally charged by most cemeteries, but are not currently charged by Oregon City. So with that, we'll dive into option number one. This is a very long list. Don't expect you to look at each individual one tonight, but we will send out a spreadsheet after this for kind of review and questions between now and the next meeting. So on the left is just a breakdown of our current prices. and then the price to achieve break even. So you can see net revenue, our break even is about $617,000 a year. Again, that varies a little bit from year to year, but our expenses are pretty fixed. We do have some non-fixed costs, which are things like our variable costs tend to be directly related to sales, and those are provided at a vendor markup rate. So those are not really the drivers of where our subsidies come from. Those would be things like headstones, liners, vaults. The more ground burials that we do, the more liners that we have to purchase. Those are just variable costs that we plan for, but they fluctuate from year to year. Our fixed costs are really staffing, and then just the costs to run the building, electric, gas for the equipment maintenance, vehicle maintenance, grounds maintenance, janitorial, those types of things that those just occur year to year, whether we're making sales or not. So this is option number one. Cities would not provide any subsidies. It would be fully covered by the people coming in for services, and we would achieve 100% cost recovery at our current number of sales. Again, those number of sales fluctuate from year to year. So looking at option two, you can see a more gradual, it's not quite of a, it's not a doubling in cost, but it is a pretty substantial increase. Just that first line item there would go from $250 to $375. So $125 price increase. And this would get us to about 75% cost recovery. The city then would subsidize the other 25%. And then looking at option three. So option three, like I mentioned, just represents a 25% price increase over current rates. So we just took the current prices over in the left column and multiplied those and increased it by 25%. So the price increases are a little more manageable in here, a little more palatable, but it does still leave us with a pretty big subsidy. It gets us closer, but we're going from maybe 315,000 to 389 based on current sales. It's a step in the right direction. It's something that would definitely keep us moving forward, but is not getting us to cost recovery. And then looking at the 10-year analysis, so regardless of any option selected, just the resolution would include the resolution for the fee increase that we would submit to the city commissioners would include the ability to add an inflationary increase each year. So one of the big issues that we've had with this fee was updated 20 years ago. They did not include an inflationary increase every year. So as inflation has gone up, these prices have remained the same. The only prices that have changed in our pricing structure are those that are direct costs from a vendor, because those we have as just markups. So when the vendor raises their price, we can raise our prices. But fees that are for staff time, those have not increased in 20 years. And obviously, salaries have increased with inflation over those 20 years. So we're really kind of behind the game on this. If you see here, you'll see the different options. We've got our current and then option one, option two, option three, versus our expenses in red. So option one obviously keeps it the closest to the expenses over time. Option two does pretty well right now, but as inflation increases, it starts to tail out there towards the end, and then further down there. So I mentioned this in our discussion in our last meeting when we talked about this. We do recognize the scenic and the historic value of the cemetery as well, and that it's probably not appropriate for 100% of the cost of running the cemetery and managing the cemetery to be on a family who comes in today for a burial. So we did actually calculate kind of what that looks like. So there's 11 acres designated as kind of that historic component, right? There's the Veterans Plaza is located within that 11 acres. The Parents of Murdered Children Memorial is located in that, and then the Historic Pioneer Cemetery is located within that. There's the 17 acres, which includes our scattering canyon. It is a service that we offer. Obviously, folks are not using all 17 acres of that. Most of that 17 acres is just forest that we manage. There's not really there's not a lot of trails that go down in there. A lot of people aren't accessing that space. And then 29 acres, or 50% of the overall cemetery acreage, is the main working cemetery where we're performing services on a regular basis. So as you see kind of the expenses and how we've allocated that out, you can see that the bulk of that, about half of the overall expenses, have been allocated today to open access events and cleanups. Those include things like the Memorial Day event that we do, just the daily maintenance of keeping the cemetery upkept and looking nice. And then the expenses that you see there for each of those different areas are expenses that we can directly tie to those areas. So we know how much it costs at the Veterans Memorial, in the historic cemetery for the maintenance there. Anything that we can directly tie to that, we've been able to allocate that. And anything else is just kind of allocated today to open access.
I'm going to ask you a question on that slide while you're there. You described the scattering canyon there, and that it sounded like it had fairly limited access or use. The cost there, $107,000. What in general are the kind of the categories of work that goes on in that area? It's kind of just managed as a natural area?
Yep. Yeah, the biggest costs that we have in the Scattering Canyon area there is a trail that we do use for folks who are purchasing that service. They can scatter cremains down in there, so there's a trail that leads down into the woods. But one of the biggest areas of maintenance down there is camp cleanup. It is directly adjacent to Newell Creek Canyon, and it is a site where we've had to clean up a lot of camps over the years, and so there's a pretty large expense associated with those. I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but there are also expenses, administrative expenses for the actual recording of the scatterings as well, and those are included in here. So again, anything that we could directly tie to a sale was allocated this way. So it's not necessarily maintenance expenses, it's also administrative.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then looking at some of the difference in services, and you'll see this more starkly in the next slide as well, just kind of how our cemetery is compared to different comparables within the area. So at Mountain View Cemetery, we have outdoor mausoleums. In a lot of the comparables, they have their crypts or niches in enclosed buildings. It's just a better visitor experience when people are visiting in the rainy seasons. We utilize an outdoor gathering area for services. At other comparable sites, they typically have an inside room that's available for those gatherings and services. One of the biggest things that we see in the differences between specifically our cemetery and other cemeteries, but really it's private cemeteries, since we are a municipality, we're a little more risk adverse to the permitting of gravesite service. We do not allow gravesite service with families pallbearing to the burial site. Our staff do that. The services are held in the covered mausoleum area, and then the typically full body casket or the cremains are then conveyed to the burial site, and our staff ends up pallbearing to the actual burial site. We put up a little barricade that they stand behind. They can watch the service, but they are not allowed to be gravesite for that. At our cemetery, we only allow single depth casket burials. At comparable cemeteries, they typically allow double depth burials, which is stacking of 2 caskets. This has pros and cons. I worked for City of Bend for a little bit, and City of Bend has a municipal cemetery. They allow double depth burials, and it can get a little complicated. You don't know when the last burial occurred, what the stability of that soil is. It is a way to make some additional income off of, the same amount of land, but it does come with some risk in the operations of that. We do not allow upright monuments in our newer sections, which are sections M and N. And in our older sections, we do not allow any more upright monuments. So if you are coming in today, you're going to have an in-ground monument that is flush with the ground and easier on the operations side to mow. Our comparables, they typically, ground lots allow upright monuments. And then just in the staffing capacity, we have a single staff member who's on site for the day-to-day maintenance, as well as our administrative staff who function as both cemetery administration and parks administration. So they're, taking phone calls from park goers who want to make shelter rentals while also handling, grieving families and people who are coming in to purchase services pre-need. At other cemeteries, they are dedicated staff for different roles. There are maintenance staff. There are, staff who provide burial services and do kind of the service side of things, and family counselors who help throughout the entire process. So this is a price comparison. This data was collected about a year ago, so it's still relatively recent. Haven't seen too many changes in it since then. And we looked at a variety of different cemeteries here in kind of the Portland metro area, including the metro cemeteries themselves, since they are one of the largest public agencies that's providing this service. One of the things that's a little difficult in this comparison is there's a lot of range in these services. So if you look at like a ground full body burial lot, we have a single price for one section. Many of these other cemeteries, they have a range of prices, and it depends on kind of the location and where it is, and the desirability of that location is the best way I can say that. You look at a Riverview Cemetery, which is a private cemetery, their full body burial lots go anywhere from $3,125 to almost $12,000. And that's just for the lot. That doesn't include the actual service of performing the burial and everything that goes along with that. So there's a broad range here. So what we tried to do was create an average price based on those comparisons and remove some of those high-low outliers. So you'll see that in the far right column. And it shows that, generally speaking, particularly for the land itself, for the actual space that people are purchasing, our prices are just below market. You can see that pretty consistently across the board, except for mausoleums. We're right around the comparables there. Then we look at can you go back for a second? Sorry about that. If we look at memorial and material sales, again, that's one where a lot of these things are direct vendor costs. So we do have the ability to change those, and those have kept up with inflation over time. That's why we didn't do those average prices. Not really looking for any upgrades there. All right, if you could please proceed. So then looking at the two new fees that we're proposing, these are very common. They are in pretty much every cemetery on that list. Those cemeteries have these two fees as part of their fee schedule. One is for the service setup. So today we are not charging for the staff time to set up service in the mausoleum. It is something that we provide. We're doing that. It's included right now in the price. We do not charge extra for it. So it does take a significant chunk of staff time to do that. With a casket service, it takes about 5 hours of staff time because four park staff have to come in and pallbear for the current operations. And then there's also the setup of the chairs, the table, the podium. So that we're looking for a $200 setup fee. And then for cremation service, that can be handled by one individual staff, typically the cemetery staff that's on site that day. It's just setting up those chairs, table, and podium. That only accounts for about 1 hour of staff time, so we're looking to charge $100 for that. The other thing is the second right to internment. So this is a little different than a double casket burial. Basically, this is the first right of internment is included with the purchase of a casket lot. That is basically your deed to that land, and it allows you to place one casket on that lot. We do allow up to 4 cremation internments on a single casket lot, but we are not charging when those burials are occurring. So if somebody comes in, we do a casket burial on a lot. They purchased it 10 years ago. Somebody comes in tomorrow, they can place a cremation on that lot, and we are not charging an additional fee for that. This is charging for that second right of internment, and it's actually really good record keeping as well. We do process those records, but there's no transaction associated with it. This really puts some kind of a transaction associated with this. Technically, it's a real estate purchase in a way. If you think about it that way, this makes it a little more like that. Can we proceed? So these are fee increases. They're not necessarily new fees. It's just we have a new option at the cemetery, and that is the new niche wall columbarium that was installed in 2024. It's a little different than niche walls that we've done in the past. It has a little more of a decorative feel to it, and it also offers us the ability to do these new memorial plaque options, which you see on the right. So with that, we'd like to just build into our fee schedule a little higher price for this particular wall, and then if we proceed in the future with adding any new niche walls, they will all be in this style. They'll all be able to support this memorial plaque option. So this would be kind of the fee going forward for anything that would be new installed at the cemetery. For that, we're looking to do a $1,600 fee for a single niche and a $3,200 fee for a double niche, which is 2 urns or cremations. For the memorial plaques, this just gives us the option to keep up with our vendor costs. It's not something that's in our fee schedule today, and it just represents a markup on our vendor costs. The prices would vary based on the wall location and what they choose, but it gives them a wide variety of options. So they can do color, black and white, bronze, pictures. I've heard of people doing QR codes that then go to a website where you can set up like a web memoriam for people to experience. Just gives people a lot of different options. I think that was the last slide.
Okay.
We'll open it up to questions.
Okay. Ken?
So Tom, is there an option for prepaid, when somebody comes in and says, okay, I want to pay for everything up front? I'm assuming that there is, right? And then there's no way to escalate that for 10 years down the road that the burial actually happens. Is that correct?
Right. Could you say that one more time?
Well, I guess I'm not quite sure how to say it, but if I come in and I say, okay, I want to pay for my funeral, and you charge me a fee, and that's so I pay this year, but I don't use the service for 10 more years. There's no escalator in between for that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then another question I had was on the, and I'm trying to guess, but it was somewhere close to $300,000 to $400,000 that really is not. I mean, it's cemetery related because events and camp cleanups and those kind of things happen, but so that $600,000 deficit or subsidy is not really subsidizing burials and the cemetery stuff. It's kind of more, most of it's subsidizing events and camp cleanups and those types of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say the bulk of it is what we call just the open access. It's just the work it takes to keep the gates open to the public. So like mowing would fit into that in a little bit. There's some of that fits into the main cemetery, but a lot of just the general maintenance that we do on a day-to-day basis, we did not allocate to a specific service, because it's we would have to do that anyway. If all of the lots were filled today, we still have to maintain the cemetery. So that's what we're trying to represent with that.
So you're not really, I mean, you can't really assess a fee towards a burial for an event that happens 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yep, and the one thing I will say about the first question is, one of the things that we do not do that you see is very common in private cemeteries, there's what's known as a perpetual endowment fund. And that is how private cemeteries typically make up that gap. You can do your kind of pre-need purchase in advance, but you're paying into a perpetual endowment fund that is going to take care of the cemetery. Because essentially, a cemetery has a limited lifespan. Eventually, at some point, the land is full. And who takes care of it at that point? A perpetual endowment fund is what does that. We do not have that today, and I don't know what the feasibility of that would be.
Do you know what the percentage of, I mean, are most of your services prepaid like that, or are they people that just come in and say, now we have an immediate need?
It's I'd say probably 50-50 based on just anecdotal evidence. We can pull it and see what's pre-need versus like current need, but on a given day, let's say we have 5 clients, 3 of them are probably pre-need and 2 are, something happened and we need this right now.
And is all of that revenue in a separate fund, or does it go into the general fund and just kind of gets dispersed annually?
Yeah, so it is all held within general fund. As I mentioned, this is the first biennium where we've split any of this out, so all of that revenue before just went into the total general fund bucket.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, anecdotally, would you say that generally when people are coming in and looking at the fee structure, and honestly, I've been grateful enough not to have to look at this kind of fee structure yet in my lifetime. So when people are looking at those, does it feel like our general population is meeting, like, does this feel like it's a hardship at a time where it's definitely a hardship at our current costs? Or does it feel like, oh, I didn't realize this wasn't quite as expensive as I thought? Because I'm concerned about, I mean, I do want to make sure that we're being sustainable, but I'm concerned about aggressive raises versus our population. And I realize I'm asking you an anecdotal question, but I'm just curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I will tell you, I think I will respond with an anecdote that I've heard. And it's actually not from the public. It is from, we work a lot with funeral homes, including those in town. And we have heard from them anecdotally that our prices are very low, especially compared to other people in the area. And that sometimes when they are having conversations with families, sometimes we're the ones who they're being sent to us from a funeral home. And when they're doing kind of that family counseling, people are looking at us and going like, we're going to go there because it's really cheap. So that is an anecdote that I've heard from those folks. I can't really speak to any, every situation is different. Some fees are, what's a hardship for one person is not for another. For both sides from the public.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Karen. Tim?
Hi, Tom. I've got 2 questions. They're going to be kind of different. The first portion is just, with your experience working with other cities who have this, you mentioned working with Bend, how much does the city's general fund go to paying towards their cemeteries? Is our structure currently with paying 50% or $300,000 a common thing, or was this just something that has just kind of fallen off the way over the last 20 years?
Well, I would say that it depends on how the city acquired the cemetery.
Yeah.
So some of the cities, City of Bend has had their cemetery for quite some time. They've had the individual who runs their cemetery, she's been there for 30 years. They are a little more on pace with keeping up to date on fee updates, just because they've had it for a while. They've known what their workload is, and they've prepared for that. You run into the situation, I think it's Lake Oswego, who just a private cemetery was transferred over to them. They're now learning how to manage that right now.
Yeah.
That is a common occurrence, or it's becoming a more common occurrence in city parks and rec. I would say that those cities are probably less prepared to figure out how to make sure that fees are covering expenses appropriately, and they're probably getting into a situation that's beyond, it might not be salvageable by the time they're taking it over, right? Like we still have a lot of land left in the cemetery. We're not at the point where we're, talking about being full in 5 years. So we still have an opportunity to adjust our fees so that we're making sure that it's maintained for the long term. That is not always the case. Sometimes when public government is taking over a cemetery, they're taking over a cemetery that has no sales, and it is pure maintenance.
And then I've got the second part. This is going to be completely different than the first part, so apologies on that. And I don't know if we have a record of this, but is there any fear with upping our costs that we will lose potential revenue or people who use our cemeteries, or has there been a cost analysis of how many people come to use us because we're so relatively cheap in the area?
Yeah, that is something that we've really taken into account in this analysis. We've looked at, I would say probably my feeling is option number one, which is full break even. I think we would basically be pricing ourselves out of the market at those prices. We're going to be at like the Riverview Cemetery level, which is great for Riverview, but Riverview provides a lot more service than we are able to provide in our current structure. So there is a market force there where they're paying a higher rate for a higher level of service. If we were to be at the same level as a Riverview, we would probably see sales decline because they are not getting the same value for what they're paying. Particularly when it comes to things like graveside services, it's just something that the city, from a risk perspective, is not interested in offering, and that is something that they offer at Riverview. So people pay a premium for that, because there is a risk to the operations when that occurs.
Thank you.
Thank you. So from this point, Tom, let me make an observation. As you went through, when I asked you about that the scatter area, and you described what some of the costs were, the use of my fees paying to you from cemetery to break even and using them for camp cleanup, I'm not looking to get into a debate here, but that doesn't seem to be, maybe that's not the right place to be securing those funds from to do that kind of work. That's something that you might want to look at down the road from my perspective. But so from here, for us as a group, you indicated you'd be back in February with kind of a follow-up for us and looking for, is that when you're going to want a recommendation from PRAC on how to approach this?
That is correct. In February, what we'd like to do is bring back this packet with the full price breakdown, so you can see these spreadsheets and what they look like. And then, we can talk through individual prices and then looking for a recommendation to the City Commission on how to move forward.
Is there a way that we could phase the prices up instead of, not all at once? We don't want to jump in, but, agree to something and say, okay, and then in 5 years, let's look at it again, rather than letting it go for 25 years and not doing anything about it at all.
Yes, and that is something that we would like to include in those options, is a gradual ramp up over time. What we need to do, though, is be careful that we're not losing that ramp up to inflation, if that makes sense.
It needs to be a little higher than inflation.
Exactly. So we just need to kind of step it up so that we're making sure that we're not losing our on ramp to any inflationary forces in the future. What I've talked about with staff and with city management is doing a cost of service analysis, which is you see this a lot in like franchise fees for garbage rates, utility rates, things like that. Doing that on a biennial basis so that we are tracking our expenses a little more closely. Now that it is a separate fund, we can keep track of things just more closely and better over time. So we'll be able to hone in and refine this over time and make more appropriate adjustments with this kind of on-ramp strategy, so we're not scaring people with a 65% cost increase or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, Ken?
And then, Tom, can you also maybe do a little bit of a forecast on what an endowment fund, how that could actually work for some of those longer term things? And
yes,
I mean, I think that would be useful because that's obviously a huge part of this. And also, do you know, or does anybody know if ballot measures 5 and 50, didn't they come in and I don't think you can charge fees that are not, or government can't charge fees that aren't directly related to the service that they're collecting for. I think, if that's still in effect or not. So, for example, you can't charge me for a burial and use the money to go clean up a homeless camp. I don't think that's even legal anymore. So I guess with that would be some sort of a breakdown of what you can legally charge for.
Yeah, and I do just want to clarify that a little bit, just so we're not misunderstanding. The cemetery is currently subsidized by general fund. So
right.
General fund would be what is paying for that. We're not like taking that, somebody swipes a credit card today and then we're taking that to pay for a camp cleanup.
No, I get it.
I understood that.
Yeah, that's just a cost that we have to cover.
Right.
But I do think that is true, and it is something. It is kind of why my general feeling is that there does need to be some sort of subsidy here, because there are just the aspects of public access. We have a lot of people who use this on a day-to-day basis just to like walk dogs and, take walks with friends and things like that. There's just the public access that needs to be maintained. So that piece of the cemetery's operations should not be paid for by the people who are seeking to bury their loved ones.
Right. Yeah, those could be carved out and maybe figure out a different way to fund that type of thing as you're looking at the whole department.
I think that's the discussion that I was suggesting maybe is needed on some very limited basis.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So, sounds like the committee will be seeing this again at the next meeting, and we should be prepared at that point to make some recommendations and possibly show our support for those in front of the city commission as well.
And Corey, you're going to send those stats to us so we can really take a look at them, because we couldn't even see one of the column headers. I had no idea. What are we talking about here on our screen? So, if we could have that in hand to really...
Were they part of the attachments, I think, that were part of the packet?
They're in the they're in the packet. I did not print them because
All right.
they were so much paper, but they are in the attachment.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Tom, and appreciate you staying the heck away from us.
What it means is we hope you feel better soon.
Yes. We'll add that too, but we
Thanks for keeping it to yourself.
Yes, keep it to yourself. Okay? We're still on track?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we do want to, if everybody is fine with circling back to public comment,
Yes?
then, yeah, that's totally up to you guys.
It's a good time to do it.
Good time
Yeah.
to do it? Yes, it is.
Before we move on to
So we
general
have a
business.
public comment?
Come on up, Damon. I think it's the microphone on the right-hand side that you'll want to use. Thank you. Yes.
There we go.
Is working, makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just not, don't touch it.
So welcome. Introduce yourself for us.
Yes, I'm Damon Mabey. I live in Oregon City, and I'm the co-chair of the Oregon City Parks Foundation. Wanted to introduce myself to you and let you know that there is a Parks Foundation. We do a lot of things with the parks. Tom and I have worked on a couple of things. Before I get started my presentation, though, I just thought I would talk a little bit about my input on those fees. I think they're very reasonable, and I can give you two of my personal examples. When my mother died, it was an immediate thing. Oh my God, we got to get her a plot. After she was buried, my dad looked ahead and said, I want the plot next to her. So we pre-bought that plot. So there was an immediate need and a future need. And also, when my mom died, we buried her here at Mountain View. Within a year, a good friend of mine died. They did not want to be buried there, a lot of family politics, so they went to a private cemetery, and it was twice the cost. And that was actually a interment. It wasn't even, dig a hole and everything. So, so we need to charge what we need to charge to get the job done. So anyway, and that's something that, Parks Foundation, we like to talk about. Anyway, so hopefully, Tom, you'll be well enough to come to our event, which is this Saturday, which is what I wanted to talk about. We're having a talk, we're sponsoring a talk by the Xerces Foundation, which is a nationwide group of people who want to make sure that invertebrate pollinators get a chance to, not die out. We need bees. But one of the other things, too, that's a pollinator that, frankly, I was, is a hummingbird. And there are lots of other, bees and beetles and even flies are pollinators. So we're going to have a little talk about that this Saturday at the swimming pool. There are still seats available. So if you cannot get a hold of us, you can go to our website, Oregon City Parks Foundation, and request a seat, or you can show up and you'll probably get a seat, because we're at the pool and there's we're not in the pool, we're at the pool. But the sort of things that we do is we have a demonstration pollinator garden down by the VFW. We're trying to convert that whole area into a drought tolerant, no maintenance site, so that that's that much less that the parks have to really do with. We've helped with scholarships to the summer camps, and the Friends of the Friends of the Buena Vista, so I don't get beat up by Denise. The Buena Vista Clubhouse is part of this group, so we're trying to, figure out grants and fundraising to get that open. It's my personal project. I don't understand why certain elements of the city were reluctant to work on it, because the city's own record showed that with no advertising, it generated 5 times its operating cost in revenue. But that's for a whole nother fight. But anyway, just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce us to you so that we're there. Tom and Hannah and most everybody in parks know that we exist and reach out. But if there's ever anything that the committee thinks that we can be a help with or whatever, please reach out to us, and we're here to help. In fact, if you go through the staff door, you'll see our little bottle can collection thing. That's one of our major fundraisers. Yeah, and the pool. We've got them all around. That's our like constant fundraising, but we do have events every now and then. Like this is a free event, but donations are gratefully accepted. Somebody actually asked, what's the recommended donation? And I said, well, $1 million, but we'll take 5. So, just in case. But that's it. Any questions for us, what we do? Yeah.
What time?
Oh, it's at 10 a.m. to noon is the talk, and then there'll be a site visit and Q&A happening right after that.
Site visit of?
They're right outside the pool is another demonstration pollinator garden that Emily and Tom kind of put together. So that we'll just walk out to that, and then there's a couple other places we'll tell people that they can visit if they, some personal ones that you can view, not walk through, but at least you can see them from the sidewalk that they've cleared.
Some of us got our hands dirty planting that garden.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Several of you did.
Yeah, so, that's our hope is that we can, at some point turn a bunch of these parks into, pesticide-free, natural, plants, lots of ivy. One of the big things that got us started besides the demonstration garden at VFW is we were the main push to get over 14 acres of ivy out of Waterboard Park. The problem is ivy doesn't stay away. So luckily we had another event, anyway, last summer I think it was, to kind of go back again. But, we don't like ivy, and we don't like wisteria, and Scotch brew doesn't belong in here. So those are the sort of things we do is we find a park and we go crazy for a while and then hopefully put it to a point where the staff can maintain it.
Sure. Good. Any other questions?
Thank you, David.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks for being here.
Yep, and feel free to show up Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on into our general business section, the holiday programs and events review.
So I'm going to actually ask Cecily if she will join us to talk a little bit about some of the holiday programming and some of the events that we did this past holiday season. We did a lot of really cool stuff with the department and just wanted to highlight some of those new and exciting things that we've been putting together. So Cecily, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So I want to preface with saying, also like Tom, I am not there in person for great reasons. I too might be coughing while I speak, and I apologize for that in advance if that happens. Very excited to say that the Pioneer Center is very busy, as many of you guys know, during the holiday season. This year we had just really an amazing, outpouring of generosity that came through, of course, from the community again. We were able to provide holiday gifts for every single nutrition, recipient through the Meals on Wheels program, as well as the congregate dining program, through our Giving Tree program. And so how that works is we put up giving trees right before Thanksgiving, and the community really just, again, shows up, and is able to do that. We had multiple groups, actually, like the women's group and the some Girl Scout groups actually take multiple tags. And then, of course, we have individuals that come and grab those tags off the trees and then support in that way. We have a very large holiday luncheon at our center as well. This is a free event designed to really give that holiday experience to those that may not be able to celebrate or have the affordability to have a nice meal. And then, of course, just our general recipients, those that really think of the center as their home, for lunch Monday through Friday. And so, again, that was a very, very successful event. This year, one of our favorite things about that event is we had a lot of citywide support. And what I mean by that is we had, of course, our department show up wonderfully, but also others from Public Works and whatnot came and served the meal. They were part of that, serving line and washing dishes and all the things that are required in that. So just very, very exciting things were happening at our center. In addition, we do a Spirit Week, which just provides that wonderful holiday feel and experience for those to just participate and just make some memories. And anyhow, we have gotten some really beautiful support and just, I would say, incredible just feedback. These things have grown. Of course, we've been kind of on this growth path since reopening programs and events. And so this year we had about a 15% increase in that holiday luncheon, for example, from last year. And I think the neat thing about our center currently is we're having a lot of space conversations. Like, we can't necessarily easily build a second floor, but if we did, we would fill it with programming, we would fill it with activity because there's so much need. And we're excited about that. We're excited about the, excitement and the participation that we're seeing. And I just want to highlight, if you guys didn't get a chance to see the commission meeting, there was a beautiful letter that was written by one of our recipients just thanking the city for the wonderful thing that the Pioneer Center is. And the mayor was kind enough to read that letter. She received a personal copy of that. I was also mailed a personal copy of that. But it just really kind of highlighted just how much these holiday programs mean to our community members and residents of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cecily.
Questions? Okay, thank you. I saw the list of, next item was movies in the park preparations. I saw the list, but I wasn't able to print it out.
It's in here.
Oh, it's in here. Okay, there it is.
Oh no, where did my? I swear I put it in here.
While we're looking for things, I just had a thought as Cecily finished up her presentation. One, I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that the team does. I know it means so much to the residents and all the folks that partake in that. Especially if you have things like letters or something that you can get permission to share. I think those kinds of things would be great to share more widely, whether it's in our newsletter or on the website or on our social media. Of course, you need to get permission and make sure that's okay. But I'm moved just hearing that you got a personal letter and that you all had copies. I know that the people who are watching the Parks and Rec and looking for ways to either get involved or to just feel that their involvement is important, especially as we look at maybe increasing fees down the road. I'd love to see us build some of that good feeling and goodwill, and I think that's an easy win for us. So just something to consider as you get, I'm sure you get letters and cards and pictures and things all the time.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice, and Tom and I are having a lot of conversations, and Tom can speak more on this too, that as we've done some great work through our Parks Master Plan, we really do want to get better at telling our story. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you just kind of mentioned that exact same thing. So that really aligns with our goals. And so I love to hear that. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that too, Cecily. And I'd love to hear more about that as you guys continue to do that work.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit that we've been doing a lot of goal setting since we're coming into the new biennium, a new year, really looking at, what do we want to accomplish in the next 2 years. And I can say that from every single division, every single person said that communication was a really high priority, and telling that story is going to be a really key component of these next couple of years. I know I've had some conversations with some of you individually and this group as a body. If we're looking at things like bonds and fee increases and things like that, what we really need to do is show people what we're doing and what that value is getting them, and that's everything from delivering projects, but then telling people about those projects so they know what we're doing, events, and so they know what we're doing and they see that. just following up with the holiday piece, I had the opportunity to participate in the holiday luncheon. I was one of the servers. Corey was there with me as well. And it is truly amazing to see the work that they do. And I actually had the public works director came up to me and was like, I didn't even know this was a thing the city did, didn't even know that this was a thing that we do on a regular basis. And so, and she was moved by it. And I think just sharing those stories really can help get people behind that message.
I think just to follow up on that, Tom, one of the, all of us have a role or a responsibility to share those things. You'd be amazed how just a few conversations with a few of your friends or people that you may come in contact with describing some of these projects, I know certainly you get people's interest, and it's amazing how you can get that information out. So we all have a role to play, shall we say, in helping with those messages and getting them out too. So, okay. Movies in the park.
Aaron, do you get a chance to see the list of the movies they're suggesting? Maybe we're going to get it here. Here we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, that's not really.
Just a question. Field of Dreams is an iconic movie, but is it still a thing? I mean, it's been...
Steve, it was a recommendation of somebody that I know.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to come up with classics.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie. I just
like a sporting
I didn't know Field of Dreams was still a thing.
I don't know. I have no idea.
They have a yearly Field of Dreams MLB Classic now where they do one game in there,
I've seen
so
that,
it has kind of come back.
Melissa did check the licensing, and it exists.
Okay.
So I believe it's an option. I don't know if children would be interested in watching, but
It made the list.
I thought it was great.
Made the list, right?
I can't actually see the list, and the link isn't working for me either. So I see that you've clicked the Word document that says 2025 movies in the park, but I don't see the list.
Okay, let me see if I can. There is hold on.
I'll say it's 9 movies. I could just label them while we're going through it. It is
That would work too.
Moana 2, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Mufasa the Lion King, or the Lion King prequel, The Wild Robot, Out of My Mind, Holes, If, and of course, Field of Dreams. One of those is very different from the others, so we don't have to name which one that is.
I'm not familiar with Out of My Mind. Does anyone know what that one is?
I don't know that one either. I was going to Google it.
I didn't actually know a couple of these.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
It's a 2024 Disney movie.
So they all seem like big winners, but also like licensing might be expensive for things like Moana 2 or Inside Out 2 or things like that. Unsure, just a guess there. But I'm sure they'll be big winners. And I kind of love the idea of having, whether it's Field of Dreams or something that maybe we can market more as a nostalgia night where people are bringing their kids to their favorite 90s movie. There's a lot of Disney movies. I've shown my child a million of them. And I think that's kind of fun to have one mixed in like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be very fun. We've also talked about at the staff level and are kind of interested in your feedback as well, of maybe targeting one of the nights towards more the teen audience, which might require us to do a PG-13 movie. Just wanted to throw that out there and see if anybody had any feedback on. We don't have anything currently on the list that's PG-13, but it is something that we've kind of batted around. I feel like we do a really good job of younger kids. We don't have a lot of programs that really hit the teenage years, and teenagers actually tend to be a lot of our visitors for movies in the park because it's a free, cheap, easy date night for a teenager. So
and it's so late at night that toddlers can't go. Like, I'd love to go, but I'm not taking my 6-year-old to a movie at 9 p.m.
Exactly.
You may not have this, and so I'm not doing a good job of raising my hand now at all. But you might not have this information, but how much in general does it cost to put on like an average movies in the park? So if we wanted to like test something out, like a teenager night, what could be the risk?
That's actually a really good question. We, in the past year, we were successful in receiving a Metro Enhancement Grant to purchase our own equipment. So in the past, the cost was really associated with the rental and setup of that equipment. Now we own it, so we don't have that fixed cost anymore for the equipment rental. So that has reduced our expenses for the event considerably. Now it's just staff time. I don't have the estimate off the top of my head, but it's 4 or 5 hours total. There's a number of staff that are involved, and then there's the licensing fees, obviously, but it does free up a pretty big component of the expenses. So it gives us a little more flexibility to try things out.
That's good information. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kim, have you talked about or considered kind of rotating the locations of the movies?
Yes, that's been a big topic of conversation this year. We've traditionally held them at EOT, End of the Oregon Trail, and Wesley Lynn. We want to look at maybe doing one at Tyrannus Woods and really try to rotate around the city. We've even talked about doing one at Park Place and how we could accommodate one out there kind of in that area that's down closer to the school. Parking would be one of the big things there, so it would be primarily serve the residents that live there that can walk. But yeah, we want to really spread out. Now that we have this equipment, we can set it up pretty much anywhere that we can set up a generator. So
I think that's an excellent way to get a broader cross-section of people involved by moving it around into basically their little communities. Erin raised her hand.
Finally, along those same lines, back when I spent time at THPRD, and I think they still do this, they had dive-in movies, which don't rely as much on the timing, like being like 9 o'clock at night or things like that. So have we considered, or have we done, please forgive me if we've done these and I didn't know, doing maybe a dive-in movie for the younger folks and their parents that we could do a little earlier?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I wish Melissa was here to say. Does anybody else know if we've traditionally done that? I can't think of.
I don't recall any discussion about things.
Yeah, I don't have any recollection of anything like that. I think would be a great idea.
Maybe just a thought, something to consider, and we could even maybe reach out to places like THPRD and see if there's any logistical things to consider, or ask them how they pull it off, if they have recommendations or things like that. I'm sure they'd be happy to share trade secrets with us.
Go ahead.
All I was going to say is if we do add, I was looking up because I don't know the difference between like PG-13 and PG. So if we do a PG-13 night, which I think is a great idea, you could add in like the new Marvel movies that come out. Dune Part 2 is into that, and just some of the bigger blockbusters that are there that would, I think, bring a bigger audience and can incorporate a lot of people. So
I personally think it's an excellent idea to try and expand that approach to a different crowd, if you will, to some degree. So we ought to take advantage of that. I note that the question put to us was about the voting, but excuse me. I noticed the question was regarding really to us was what we thought about voting, but what does that really mean to us?
I think that Melissa's intention was to have us take a look at these and see if there's any right off the bat that you would think would not be appropriate. I know that she is trying to get down to 4, so was just wanting to send it through you guys to see if there's anything that you're thinking should not make the cut.
don't want to hurt anybody's feelings on removing some movies from the list.
Just say
Well, I've
it,
already
Jim.
done it,
Just
so
say
go
it.
ahead.
Tread carefully.
I don't see the negative in regards to keeping an open list or even adding in a PG-13 movie night since it's a publicly voted thing. It would be interesting to hear Melissa's reasoning on why she'd want to limit it, but these all seem like good options. And from what I Googled on Out of My Mind, it's a Disney movie about, it just seems like a Disney teen movie in a way. So yeah, they all seem, I've seen almost every one of these, so I don't see any reason to remove any of them.
I agree. I've had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with my grandkids over the holidays, and we saw a couple of those while we were at holidays. So I think the list is certainly acceptable to get out for people to get their vote on.
Melissa may not like this, but if I were to make a movement, I would probably recommend to add one PG-13 movie night, as Tom had mentioned, and add that to the list for the community to have. Sorry, Aaron, I
Spaceballs
cut
was
you off
my
there.
recommendation for that.
We were really leaning into the nostalgia there. I like that.
Well, and I might ask maybe for your favorite 90s nostalgia. Like, I know we do a lot of this voting on our Instagram specifically, and we got millennials like me on Instagram, and I can tell you the ones that I want to have on there. So maybe we look at even an option for folks to suggest to us. As long as we're not saying the top 4 that you vote for are the ones that we will pick, we're just grabbing opinions, I think it would be nice to see what folks are interested in.
I like that. That seems like something that would provide sort of that back and forth conversation with the community. So how about we table this until February? We do not have to put this out right now. I did check with Melissa ahead of time, and I was like, do they have to vote on it tonight? And she said no. So why don't we make our kind of action item that we'll go back and look at the PG-13 movie and put forward a campaign to ask the community what they'd like to see. And then we'll bring back a final list for you in February.
Okay. Your February agenda is getting busier by the agenda item.
It really is.
Excellent. Thank
We're
you.
gonna keep you busy here this year.
Yeah. The next business item was the SDC methodology update.
Yeah, so just wanted to give you an update that we have met with the City Commission one time. We've been working on some of the feedback that they've provided to the SDC methodology. We're looking to go back in a work session on February 11th to discuss those results. So if you are available, we'd love to see you there. It should start at 6 p.m. out at Robert Libke Public Safety, so feel free to come out and see it. We've made some adjustments and refinements to what's included on the list based on some of the comments and feedback that we received from City Commission. One of the biggest updates is the inclusion of End of the Oregon Trail in the CIP list. We only included a percentage though, because most of the work that would be done at EOT would not be SDC eligible, since it would just be replacing like for like, but there is some opportunity there to do some upgrades that would qualify. So we kind of worked through that with our consultant. We also looked at the pool. So in the original SDC methodology, we included 100% of a new pool at about $60 million. That resulted in obviously a very high SDC for a single family home. So one of the things that we looked at is in other situations, actually Tualatin Hills, Parks and Rec did this recently, where they included a new pool in their SDC list, but they only included a percentage. So we looked at how many residents use the pool versus how many non-residents use the pool, and it's about a 50-50 split. So we only included 50% of the overall cost in the SDC list. I was just looking at the table, and we're coming in at around somewhere in the $7,000 to $12,000 range for a single family home, depending on size. One of the requests that was made was that we scale it appropriately the same way that we do with our water. So we based it on Wes's scaling for single-family homes, so it's based on square footage, and that's kind of where we're sitting today. Those numbers will fluctuate as we refine it and get any feedback from City Commission, and then once we have the go-ahead from them, we'll bring it forward to you for review and a recommendation for approval.
Ken?
Any questions?
I didn't even have to raise his hand. Ken has a question.
So, well, I guess I'm confused. What is happening on the 11th?
The 11th is another work session with the City Commission where we're reviewing the work from the SDC consultant. We've done some of the adjustments that they requested and some of the feedback that they gave, and we're taking that back to them for feedback to see what our next steps are to move it forward.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this item? Okay, thank you, Tom. Budget preparation details.
Yeah, that's me again. So, as I mentioned earlier in one of our discussion items, we are entering a new biennium this year. So starting July 1, we will be in a new biennial budget. So that process has now kicked off here internally within the department. We're working on our budget preparation. And I just want to say a huge shout out and thank you to the staff and all the different division managers. We've really worked to be ahead of the game. We worked in advance back in December, putting together some internal documents and really doing some deep analysis on our budget to figure out how we can allocate costs so that we can do some of these programs and things that we've heard have been really successful while not really increasing our ask to general fund. And it's just looking at some items, line items that we've traditionally budgeted for that have maybe been underspent over time. Where can we better allocate those funds, and really being intentional with how we're doing that going forward. So we've been going through a lot of different budgets setting and processes to do some analysis on that. And then we've also been working on some internal goal setting. So we had a kind of a retreat with all the different division managers and some of the staff to talk about department and divisional goals and what our focus areas should be for these next 2 years. Those are going to be shared with the City Commission once they're refined. Right now, we're kind of in that refinement period. Lots of good ideas. We spent about 3 hours of brainstorming and came up with a lot of really good projects and general themes. And I would say, just generally speaking, we're really focused on, increasing accessibility and inclusion to the programs, increasing the communication of what we're doing, what our story is, improving and building upon our existing assets, and making sure that those are well maintained and taken care of for the future. And then trying to improve those things that we can and make this a more livable and more green city going forward. So again, we're refining those goals, and then we'll all obviously take into account the City Commission goal setting process and how that plays out for parks. But just wanted to share that there will be some opportunities where we'll share information with you over the next couple months about how that process is going, and we're just kicking that off right now. So stay tuned, and we'll share more as it is available.
Have you utilized, over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of outreach to the public, a lot of survey work, a lot of that was done that gave us a lot of information on priorities that at least the public. Have you guys been utilizing those reports or those lists to help you with some of the budgeting kind of approaches?
Yes. A lot of the work that went into the parks master plan and the data that was gathered from that has been essential in our goal setting and budgeting process. The one I think about the most, pretty much on a daily basis, is when they were doing the parks master plan, they did what's called the $10 exercise. If you had $10, how would you spend it? And the bulk of people said that they want the majority of the money to go towards deferred maintenance and making sure that the existing assets are taken care of. And that's a common theme that I've heard just anecdotally in conversations with citizens all throughout the city. So this budget is really focused on, there's a lot of project work that's set aside and funding that's set aside for taking care and improving existing assets while still maintaining, momentum on some of the longer term projects that we have, like Clackamas Park, end of the Oregon Trail, and some potentially unique opportunities that we have at some other sites to make some improvements.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Tom. I think we've got all your reports for the evening, I think.
I think so.
All right. We are at the point where we were going to add back in our discussion regarding the interviews that we conducted in December. And I think if everyone is ready to do that, let's describe what our job here is this evening. We need to prepare an approach or a set of recommendations with regard to individuals that we can give to the mayor for her consideration and appointment. Recall that she sat in on, I believe, all of our interviews, all 4 of the interviews we had. We've got at least 4 positions. We are not obligated to fill all of those positions at this point in time. As is just normal, we go, I think, with what we believe are the best individuals to fill the positions, and then if we have to go out again for another round of solicitations, why we do so. So we have 4 individuals. I'm going to screw the names up, but we've got, of course, Ken Worser, Linda Taylor, Rachel, I wrote it down as Rawson, and Melissa, this is the name I'm going to mess up.
Dioy?
Dioy? D-E.
I don't recall how she pronounces it, but.
She said it, and
I know.
I've talked to her several times too, and I apologize for not getting her last name right if I screwed it up. So those are the 4 individuals that we interviewed and had the chance to speak with and get feedback from. I would entertain thoughts and ideas from the members regarding these individuals.
I don't remember the last year how we did this. Did we do this person by person or just give our collective thoughts as a whole? Corey, do you remember it all?
I believe we did person by person. It's when I talked to Steve on the phone today, I was like, oh, we did like election forms, but that's when we actually were electing our chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking about.
I don't, when you're doing you've got to, this is my personal belief. I think you take a look at the cadre we've got and take them as a whole and give us your opinions about who you believe out of that group is best suited for the positions we're here. I don't think you have to go through each one. Particularly the challenge, of course, is that it's been unfortunately, we got this time lag also between, and so while I took some pretty darn good notes, there's things you may miss as well. So.
Yeah, I also have their applications available if we need a refresher for anything. The application only shows so much, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all my notes. I can go through, and then if you guys want to kind of go through what you have, I guess. So Ken, I mean, definitely we can't have him around. He's just no experience in Parks and Rec. No, I'm so sorry. This is just a joke. For the public record, Ken has excellent experience. He's been here. He's passionate. He is, very valuable member. He would be an easy yes vote for me, given his lifetime of work in Parks and Rec, dedication, and there's always a plus for me when you have young kids who play at the park, and of course he doesn't have young kids, but he has grandkids, and I think that's a wonderful plus. I am on a yes or I would make a motion to approve both Melissa and Rachel as well. I thought that they both had unique backgrounds. As a parent, I like I'll go with my notes with Melissa. I like that she lived here her entire life and has that background. As somebody who just moved here recently, I think that having a good mix of backgrounds is good for a committee, and having some of the historical elements that I don't have was great. She had a big focus on her daughter and kids who do all the activities and youth sports, and I really liked her conversation and details that she had there. Just really liked her answers that were there. Rachel, I know that there was some discussion about. I thought that she had a good background as well. She's been a part of other boards before. She's a community member who wants to help. She seems to have that passion. I know, if I remember right, and this doesn't really affect my decision at all, but she applied to a lot of the boards. I'm not sure if she's specifically parks oriented or just wants to give back, but I think a part of it and why I joined this personally was to give back, so I wouldn't deny somebody else who's just trying to get involved in the community and help. I think she had a good background and enjoyed that. Linda Taylor is the only one that I had marked down as a no, and I think the reason why I had that is she answered every question the same, and I was trying to get more out of it that was there, but there was never a specific answer to any of the questions that she had, and I worry about that cohesion with the rest of the group if there's other questions that are there, if it'll detract from the conversations that we have. So that was my concern that I had with Linda. So my motion personally would be a yes for Rachel, Melissa, and Ken, and it would be a no for Linda Taylor.
Thank you.
Ken, what do you think?
I went first, okay? I put myself out there.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I would just want to echo Tim over there. Ken, of course, we want you back. You add so much to this group. And Melissa had a lot of talents that I think would be good, working with the CCC Foundation and maybe giving us some hints on how we could maybe do something for the cemetery. And Rachel, I was a little concerned because she had applied for everything. I don't know if she is on any other committees or was appointed, and so that would make a difference. But I see no problem at this point of recommending Ken, Melissa, and Rachel to be members of PRAC and excusing Linda.
Okay. Aaron?
Sure. Yeah, I can go. I also would love to welcome Ken back. Really great interview, even though I really appreciated how you put your heart and your knowledge into the interview, even though you knew all of us. That was very kind and did a wonderful job. I also really liked Melissa. I liked her connection point with CCC. I actually think that's a good relationship for us to have as a committee, as well as how she talked about giving back to the community. She talked about spring and summer breaks. It seems like a nice blend between kids that are really involved and then also stepping out and seeing how we can use the more natural areas. When I with Rachel, while I did like a lot of the connections that she had and some of the conversations and answers that she gave, talking about the cost of living was important to her, the houseless, seeing what we do with houseless populations. I did note that when asked specifically about Parks and Rec type mission, what we do, what's important to us, she didn't have much of an answer. It didn't seem like she was someone who had like perused a website ahead of time or seen much in there. At least that's what my notes say. So it didn't really seem like she was as connected to our cause as I would have liked to see someone who's going to sit on a board and potentially help make decisions. So for me, while I would be happy to welcome Rachel on there, probably not one of my top candidate choices. I'd be happy to recommend Ken and Melissa. I'm also along the same lines with Linda. I didn't feel like her answers were cohesive to the questions being asked. So I would probably excuse Linda, be okay with the group's decision on Rachel, and then welcome Melissa and Ken.
Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I just kind of want to echo exactly what Aaron said. I think that Ken, of course, we would love to have you back. And Melissa, I think, had a lot of really relevant experience that we don't currently have represented. So I think that would be a really important connection to have. I think I share concerns about, like when that third candidate whose name I'm blanking on at the moment, was interviewed and asked Rachel was asked specifically like what concerns she had that would be relevant on like a PrAC meeting in the future. I think that there was a little bit of grappling there that maybe because she had applied to so many different committees, it was confusing or not something that she had had time to look in advance. But I do think that research is an important aspect of like showing up prepared. And so, I think that she would probably be a good candidate. I think that, Ken and Melissa are two that I would feel confident in recommending.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm the remaining individual. All of you have, I think, characterized my thoughts quite well. Particularly, Aaron, you did a nice job there and kind of the thinking I had. I certainly, Ken and Melissa are very good candidates for our positions. I have no question about that. You brought up some of the concerns that I think all of us have shared maybe a little bit with Rachel. I think she was prompted actually on a couple of questions and didn't quite hit the answers on those the way that I was hoping she might. And so if I were making a motion at this point and recognizing that we want to get the best individuals who are best suited for what we want to do into the future, I think both Ken and Melissa fit that bill for me personally. And so I guess we need to have a motion. But
I'll move
I don't believe I can do the motion. So
I will move that PrAC recommend to the mayor Ken and Melissa as for appointment onto PrAC.
I can second that.
Awesome, thank you.
been moved and seconded, the recommendation of Ken Worcester and Melissa. I'll get it right one of these days.
Just Melissa, just go first. Just go first.
Yeah. Is there any opposition to the recommendation? Okay, so moved. So, Corey, I don't know what form this recommendation takes when it's transferred or put forward to the mayor. You do a document of some kind or what?
Yeah, I do. I'll work with the city recorder's office as well to make sure that she gets that, those details appropriately.
So then a follow-up to that is, obviously, I believe we have at least 4 positions open. It would seem to be appropriate to do a push again to try and solicit more individuals. Maybe after the holidays here, there'd be some more interest. People might be, new lease on life after the first of the year.
Yeah, I spoke with the assistant city recorder today, and he had mentioned that there is nothing saying that we can't open a window back up and advertise those spots, especially because the fewer people we have, the less opportunity for a quorum, and we do not want to be canceling meetings.
Right.
But we do want to fill those spots appropriately, as it sounds like you guys are fully aware of. So I can take that idea back to the city recorder and see what that looks like to open that window back up, if that's what you guys would like to see
I guess
happen.
if the group is like-minded in the thinking, that would be my recommendation, that we look at the opportunity, how we go about doing that, and what's the best way to get the information out there so we can start soliciting for a couple more, at least 2 more positions at this point.
Because she's not going to let you go till we fill them.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. So next month is when we would be having elections for chair and vice chair.
Right. When, I guess maybe that's the question, when would I'm trying to remember when the mayor makes these appointments. I don't know how quickly that occurs after we get our recommendation to her, but.
I think it happens fairly quickly. And then we send out a welcome email to the new appointed member. They go through, they get a little training video, and then Jacob is going to be doing our annual training at next month's
So we should.
meeting as well.
Our goal then would be to have the mayor make some kind of a action.
Yes.
That would possibly get the individuals here to sit.
At our February meeting.
February meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
I can speak to that. I currently have a placeholder on the February 5th agenda for City Commission. So now that you've moved and accepted these 2 members, we'll turn that into an actual action item. And so they will be appointed on February 5th. So they will be available as appointed members for our February BRAC meeting.
Perfect.
So they'll be there for the ethics and then the election of the chair and vice chair.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. I know it's a bit of a commitment of extra time to go through this, but this is probably one of the more important things we do to try and get good people to sit around this table. We've, I think we've certainly had some good candidates, and we're on the way. So, okay. Given our time here this evening, member reports. Anyone have anything to add? Yeah, Ken.
I've got 3, I guess. One, I really enjoyed the pollinator garden planting party. That was, I thought, pretty well managed, and the weather, held up pretty good for us. So, so thanks for doing that. It was, a lot of, what's the old saying? Many hands make something go pretty quick. So it really didn't take very long.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting. And we, then also I spend at least 1 day a week at the indoor park. So it's kind of neat to just look out and kind of see it right there too. So that was really pretty fun. And I really enjoy, and the kids enjoy the indoor park. And I'm kind of like, selfishly, I'm glad that it's not very crowded, but it's like, with the weather the way it is now, of course, people should just be out in a park. It's albeit a little bit cold, but last month, that was a lifesaver to, when it was raining every day, to have that facility available, and the kids really enjoyed it. So thank you, staff, for setting that up. And then I just wanted to throw out that I am, also, I guess I have 4 things. I did go to the commission and propose our kind of our agenda for the year, I guess, if you will. And I learned a couple things. One, that we need to, and it's probably been my fault, I should have prepared something to have for them in writing. So I think they were kind of maybe not quite blindsided by by our proposal to, work on some specific projects, but I think a little bit more forewarning would have probably made it a little bit more productive. So I don't know if we've heard anything back about those proposals. Okay.
I can speak to that. So we did put together a letter, which was the request from the mayor that we put them in writing. So we put together that letter, got your feedback on that. So thank you for that. And that has been submitted, and I'm just waiting back to hear back on, kind of how they feel about that. I have a feeling that a lot of those are going to come up in the goal setting retreat that we're going to have with commission coming up. A lot of the things that we talked about there also seem to fit with staff goals and what we're looking to do. So I think that'll be a lot of the conversation at that point, and we'll have some more clear answers here in the next couple weeks.
Well, and that was our goal, was to try to get it out to them early enough so that they could kind of bless it or at least head us in a different direction. And then finally, just kind of for what it's worth, I'm not going to be in town for next month's meeting, so I can try to Zoom in. We'll be quite a ways away, but we'll see how it works. But if it's training and things, I guess I don't feel like since I've already seen it three times, I might not miss too much of it. But I will do my best to try to Zoom in if I can.
Yeah.
I believe I did one of these from a
Fishing boat or something in Alaska.
I was in the southern hemisphere, I believe, at one point.
I know that the February meeting will be tricky because we do have elections, and so we definitely need a certain amount of people here. Certainly no pressure for the chair and vice chair elections. So just putting that out there as well.
You have to have a quorum.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Maybe if you get some sort of notice of people not showing up, and that might be motivate me a little bit more to try to Zoom in from a secluded island.
I think for
At least the first 10 minutes.
Yeah,
right, yes. I think for this meeting in particular, I will ask people to make sure to respond to me directly with an RSVP.
Okay.
Just so that I do have that,
Thank you.
an idea of what that will look like.
I don't have a report, but I just had a question for Tom. I had heard from one of the other Oregon City Parks Foundation members that the Xerxes Society individual, Matthew, who's going to be giving the presentation, was hoping that there'd be somebody available that day to, like at the end of the presentation, to do a walk around of the garden. And I'm wondering, Tom, I know you said you're sick. I'm also sick. Is that something that you're planning on attending? And if not, I can potentially go and just mask up.
So I did not get that request. That's the first I'm hearing of it, and I'm not going to be available to be there on Saturday.
Okay.
If you could do that, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll definitely go. I'll have my kiddo and I'll just wear a mask. I just wanted to touch base because I think that, I don't know if Matthew's familiar with that site. And so, yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else?
Erin's got her hand up.
Erin, your hand is up.
I'm trying to be
No,
polite.
you're doing good.
I feel like you need some light.
Tim is helping me. Make sure he
So
sees
much
it.
as a report, more just a comment. Two things. One, I wanted to compliment Tom. You've been giving a lot of information in this particular meeting, but really ever since we've started hearing from you more and more often, I have felt these meetings get more productive and be more engaging, and I'm just really grateful for your leadership thus far. So I want to say thank you. It shows. It's very clear that you put your heart and your soul into your work here, and we're really lucky to have you. And then I also want to say just a thank you to Steve for being and serving on our PRAC. I know that this is like your last meeting, so I just want to say thank you to you too for guiding us all through this and being our chair this year. It's been lovely to work with you too.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've got a good group here, and it almost feels as though we've been kind of we're being released a little bit here to get since I've been on this committee, I think you guys are headed to a place now where you're going to actually be able to get out, do some things, make a difference, and provide the kinds of input that I'd originally hoped that we would have been able to do. So I think you're on your way. So thank you. Just one observation, Ken made it, that I have for the parks part of this. I try to about once a week drive around and see a new park around the area. And you said it, Ken, while the weather has been a bit frigid at times, it has been amazing to me, the participation in our parks, you know, as I've been going around these last several weeks in this at least drier weather, chilly, but boy, you know, the numbers of people you see out there with the even small kids participating, it really shows you how important the parks are. I get to see one right across from my house at Rivercrest. It's, you know, it's too cold for me, but there's people out playing in the jungle gym and everything else. So it certainly is a good testament to the value of the parks in this community and the way the community utilizes those. So, anything else? Okay. Next scheduled meeting, February 27th. I will be in sunny Fairbanks, Alaska. Yeah, another really warm place.
Seems like you zoomed into us one time.
Anyway,
So we don't have, I guess, getting a chair elected, well, I don't know.
I don't know how that's going to work.
So,
We may have to talk about that a little bit. I'm flying back actually that day from Fairbanks. If I'm lucky, I'll make it by about 2 p.m, so I could be here that evening to at least oversee that, the elections part of it.
Right.
And that'd probably be appropriate. So why don't, if that is appropriate, why don't I plan on doing that that evening? Because I'm supposed to be back here that afternoon, unless the snows bury us somewhere in Fairbanks. But
we hope not.
okay. So maybe I'll see you guys one more short time. So with that, I will adjourn our meeting for tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.